syndrome is very common with radicular and TOS patients. So what Brugger's is, you can look it up on the internet later. You'll see 3 or 4 different versions, but mine's the right one.
Okay.
Not wishy-washy. So here's the thing. Brugger's. Patient's going to sit in their chair. They can do it while they're seated, and I want to stand so you can see me. It can be done in their desk. It takes 30 seconds. They can do it 2 or 3 times a day, and they will love you for this. First thing they do, sit upright, head tall, like they're going to touch their head on the ceiling. Take their arms, reach them back with their hands open and extend. And nice deep breath. And hold that for 30 seconds. That is the anti-upper cross.
Kick away.
It's it just feels good. For somebody that's doing this all day, head down, working on stuff, upper cross. This is sit tall, arms back, wrists extended, big breath, touch the ceiling with the top of your head, and hold it 30 seconds. And it just feels wonderful. It just helps your patients with upper cross syndrome, desk jockeys, which means 80% of United States of America employees and students. And it is really a helpful, simple, free thing they can do right at their desk. So just remember, include that when you get to clinic for your patients that have a lot of neck trouble, forward head carriage, upper cross, radicular symptoms. That can't hurt anybody.
What was that called again?
Brugger's, B-R-U-E-G-G-E-R apostrophe S.
I just got movement in 4 segments when I did that.
What's that, sir?
I just got movement in 4 segments when I did that.
Yeah. Send yourself a bill. Oh wait, you're not licensed yet. Practicing chiropractic medicine. Yeah, it is kind of like that though. I mean, how often do we unwind ourselves? And that is so good for patients. It's not fancy, it's nothing metaphysical, it's just stretching the other way, undoing what most people do all day. It's why when we sit all day, we're supposed to get up and walk around. I used to tell patients, just if every half an hour you got back pain, just go walk to the water fountain or bathroom and back. Just get up out of that chair, unload the discs, unload the facets. And just that simple little maneuver, they're looking for some kind of complicated solution. I like easy. And patients like free. So that is something just about everybody can do and should do. Brugger's. So I'm surprised you don't learn these things. But now you have. So I feel better.
I didn't know it was called Brugger's.
Huh?
I didn't know it was called Brugger's. That's weird. So many names.
Well, anyway. So all of this jazz, and then the Valsalva maneuver isn't something you do to the patient. It's part of what? Triad.
Desjardins.
Desjardins triad. Right, it's Valsalva maneuver. It's okay. You get it. You would have picked it out of a multiple choice. Absolutely.
Don't sleep on DiGiorno on there. They make some good pizzas.
It's not delivered.
Desjardins triad. And the Valsalva maneuver will accentuate a space-occupying lesion by increasing the intrathecal pressure, because the spinal vessels do not have, the veins do not have valves, like on our legs. They're one of the vascular trees or systems that do not have valves. So it allows backflow. And when it allows backflow, if you take a flexible tube and you squish it at the top, below it, it's going to get bigger. It becomes another space-occupying lesion. So if you have one already, you have a spur or a disc or a tumor, and you add one, the patient's going to feel reproduction of their familiar radicular symptomatology. The Desjardins triad is helpful because coughing creates an impulsive increase. Sneezing creates an impulsive, short-lived, high amplitude but low duration increase. Valsalva creates a more gradual, slightly lower amplitude but more prolonged duration. So, Desjardins try it. But Valsalva is typically gonna solve your problems for you. Would you think Valsalva would be more useful in this, with a cervical space occupying lesion or a lumbar space occupying lesion?
Lumbar.
Cervical.
That's what almost everybody says. So let's reason together. Remember, space available for cord is the key. That's Steele's rule of thirds in the upper neck. 1/3 dens, 1/3 cord, 1/3 safety zone. So, in the lumbar spine, is the canal bigger in the lumbar or the cervical region?
Lumbar.
Where does the cord end in the lumbar spine?
Lumbar. L1.
L1-ish, 2-ish, right? So what's below that? Just the spaghetti strand, cauda equina, and CSF.
Mhm.
So you can drive a U-Haul van through that canal. Lots of margin for error. On the other hand, or as I would text my youngest daughter to torment her with my attempt to be cool, OTOH. In the cervical spine, it's an inside joke. She just drives her nuts when I do that. Dad, you're too old to be using emojis.
Okay.
So I do it twice as much.
That's so cute.
Anyway, now I've figured out the ones that motion emojis, like I'll send her one that wink at her, you know. But she acts like she hates it, but I think she likes it.
Have you gotten to the double taps yet? Thumbs up, thumbs down, haha, exclamation.
No.
Oh my God.
That's too much for me. But I
It's coming.
I do smiley faces, okay? And I've got the one that cries, and the head like this and cries, so I'm getting there. So anyway, back to the point. You're paying like $40 an hour to hear my nonsense.
Sorry.
So here's the thing. In the cervical spine, you've got a smaller canal, you've got the cervical cord enlargement, and you've got much less margin for error. So for Valsalva maneuver, it's going to be much more effective for cervical radiculopathy. However, for boards, it's still taught for cervical and lumbar, even though it really makes very little sense for lumbar. So if you are at part 4 and you're faced with a Valsalva maneuver for a patient with low back and leg pain, and your simulated patient, you have them do it beautifully, I want you to strain as if you're going to the bathroom, hold it, and they'll go, ow, ow, ow. And you're going to say, where does it hurt? They're going to say, all the way down my leg. You're going to consider that to be a positive Valsalva maneuver. And when you get to the PEP station, which is the next station after mine, the post-encounter probe, it'll say, based upon the patient you just examined, it'll give you 8 tests, and it'll say, pick 3 of the most appropriate tests that you would do if you were to do more tests. You would think of radiculopathy. So, again, I have to teach you what's reality, not reality for boards. It isn't always reality in the trenches. So forgive me for that, but I owe that to you. So, yeah, it is better for the neck. It's more likely to create a space-occupying lesion that matters in the neck. All right, and here's that Wayner's cluster I was telling you about. Look at number 1. There's a reason ULTTA is number 1, because it's the best of the 4. And here it says, if it's negative, only a 3% probability. If you do a ULTTA on a patient that you think has cervical radiculopathy, and it's negative, your heart rate can go down, your blood pressure can go down, you can quit sweating. It's probably not a true radiculopathy, probably. Still could be, but only 3% chance, according to Wayner. And this was in Spine 19 years ago. Good study. But the other tests that go with it, look at, these are really kind of puny tests that in Wayner's cluster. Active cervical rotation. If you can't go 60 degrees to one side, that's considered a positive test. This one, cervical distraction. If you decrease their radicular symptoms with cervical distraction. That's another positive test. And then this one, Sperling A. They don't even get the Sperling B. That's how good ULTTA is. So if you have 4 out of 4 positive tests, you got 99%. It just doesn't get much better than that. And there's no 100%. The only way you will know 100% is to cut the patient open and surgically confirm it. Visualize it. So that's a really good cluster. That's why I show it to you. You don't have to memorize this cluster. It'll do you good to be familiar with some of this stuff, but just the point I want you to see here is that ULTTA is the first of Wayner's cluster. I got this out of Chad Cook, Netter's book, and Souza, and these are the pages. And this is the chart right out of there. And it's really a good cluster. What about clusters? Well, number one, clusters can save your patient pain, and almost as importantly, it can save you work. Because when you've got a patient in front of you, Dorian's in front of me and he says, I got neck and arm pain. Your head is full of tests. Which one do I pick? Well, the clusters have been researched and they've been found together. It's like 1 + 1 = 3. It's just a better, more evidence-based, evidence-informed way to do stuff rather than just picking random tests. So we don't do cookbook medicine, but hey, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of a helping hand, and that's what clusters do. At my other institution, they were cookbook medicine. I'm sorry, I mean them no disrespect, but they had non-orthopedists teaching orthopedics, and they made these poor interns memorize all these clusters. And they'd come to my pod when they weren't there, and they would write down like 16 tests for a patient that had this condition, and I would take my pen and I'd draw a line through. I had to approve their ortho test. I'd take my line and draw a big, bold, diagonal line through it and put no. And because I don't want them doing 16 tests to a patient that's suffering. For goodness sake. Your dentist, when they find the cavity, do they hit it with a hammer and flick it and, drill on it a little and, hit it again? I mean, when they get their answer, they got their answer, right? That's all you need is your answer. You got your pain generator. Don't make your patient miserable. And it's the same principle for the lumbar spine, and you'll learn some next unit. So that is the end of cervical spine. You guys have survived it and done very well. ULTTA, you were at or near the top of the skill level, frankly, for the ULTTA. I allow that, I limit that section because that ULTTA usually takes longer to teach. So, as they say in Australia, good on you, mates. Well done. Any questions? Yes, no?
No, sir.
Okay, so you're done.